The blinding light of the transport bay dimmed as Yuri Ivanov stumbled forward, his wrists bound by energy cuffs that hummed against his skin. He blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the strange purple-tinged atmosphere of the alien vessel. 3 days ago, he'd been a maintenance engineer on the International Space Station. Now, he was a prisoner of the Gelvan Empire, captured during their first official contact with humanity. "Move, Earth specimen," ordered the guard behind him, a tall, slender being with silver-gray skin and 4 arms. The Gelvan gave Yuri a shove that nearly sent him sprawling onto the polished floor. "I have a name," Yuri muttered, straightening up. "It's Yuri." The Gelvan's large, pupil-less eyes narrowed. "Your designation is Earth Specimen 7. You will respond to this until the High Command determines your value." Another Gelvan approached, this one wearing an elaborate uniform adorned with what looked like military insignia. "Is this the one captured near their orbital habitat?" "Yes, Commander Kratall, the 7th specimen." Commander Kratall circled Yuri slowly, examining him with scientific curiosity. "Interesting physiology, similar to Ventaxians but clearly more primitive." He reached out and prodded Yuri's bicep with a 3-fingered hand. "Bring him to the assessment chamber. High Command wants data on Earth biological capabilities before the diplomatic meeting tomorrow." Yuri felt a chill run down his spine. Diplomatic meeting. "Your ships appeared without warning and started grabbing people." Commander Kratall made a sound that might have been a laugh. "A necessary precaution. Your species' history indicates a tendency toward violence when confronted with the unknown. We needed samples to study before formal introductions." His tone grew sharper. "Now move, or we'll use neural stimulators to motivate you." The guards led Yuri through winding corridors that seemed to pulse with energy. Other aliens, not all Gelvans, moved about their tasks, some stopping to stare at the human in their midst. After several minutes, they arrived at a large circular chamber filled with various machines and monitoring equipment. In the center stood what looked like a workout station from hell, a mix of chrome, pulsing lights, and unfamiliar technology. Around it, several aliens in white lab coats conferred over data tablets. "The strength assessment will begin immediately," announced Commander Kratall. "Remove its restraints." As the energy cuffs deactivated, Yuri rubbed his wrists and surveyed the room. 6 armed guards watched him carefully, weapons ready. Escape wasn't an option. A female Gelvan with elaborate cranial ridges approached. "I am Chief Scientist Mira. You will undergo physical assessment to help us understand your species' capabilities." "And if I refuse?" Yuri asked. "Then we will collect data from your autopsy instead," she replied flatly. "The choice is yours, Earth Specimen 7. Yuri sighed. "Fine. What do you want me to do?" Mira gestured to the strange machine. "This is a universal strength quantifier. It is calibrated to measure force output across different species with varying physiological structures." She pointed to what looked like a horizontal bar. "You will lift this using your upper appendages. The machine will automatically adjust resistance to determine your maximum capacity." Yuri approached the machine warily. It looked advanced but straightforward enough, a high-tech bench press. He positioned himself beneath the bar as Mira made final adjustments. "Our preliminary scans indicate your musculature is relatively dense for your size," she noted, "though nowhere near Krovian standards. Begin when ready." Yuri took a deep breath and wrapped his hands around the bar. It felt cool to the touch, with a slight vibration he couldn't place. He planted his feet, set his shoulders, and pulled upward. The bar moved easily, too easily. It felt virtually weightless. "Is it working?" he asked, continuing to lift the bar up and down with minimal effort. Mira frowned at her data tablet. The initial resistance is set to the average Gelvan capability. Continue lifting while the system calibrates. Yuri shrugged and kept going. The bar began to grow heavier, incrementally increasing in resistance with each repetition. By the 10th lift, he could feel it challenging his muscles. "Interesting," Mira murmured. "Your strength-to-mass ratio is higher than predicted." The resistance continued to increase. After 20 lifts, Yuri was straining, his muscles burning with effort. The aliens watched intently, recording data and exchanging comments in their clicking language. Commander Kradal stepped closer. "How much further can it go before failure?" "I'm not a lab rat," Yuri grunted through clenched teeth as he completed another repetition. "All species serve as data points for the Empire," Mira replied dispassionately. "The machine will continue increasing resistance until you can no longer lift it." The bar was now extremely heavy. Sweat poured down Yuri's face as he struggled through each lift. His arms trembled with exertion, but a stubborn pride kept him going. If these aliens wanted to see what humans could do, he'd show them. Suddenly, Mira's eyes widened as she stared at her tablet. "This cannot be correct. The resistance has surpassed Gelvan elite military levels." Commander Kradal moved to look at her screen. "Impossible. Recalibrate the system." "It is functioning properly," she insisted. "The Earth specimen is exceeding expected parameters." The bar now felt like it weighed hundreds of pounds. Yuri's muscles screamed in protest, but the comments from the aliens fueled something primal within him. With a guttural roar, he summoned every ounce of strength and pushed upward one more time. A loud crack echoed through the chamber, followed by a shower of sparks from the machine. The resistance mechanism had given way under the force of Yuri's final lift. The bar shot upward, nearly hitting the ceiling before an emergency dampening field activated, slowly lowering it back down. Stunned silence filled the room. The aliens stared at Yuri, then at the smoking machine, their expressions unreadable. Yuri sat up, breathing heavily. "Sorry about your equipment," he said, though he wasn't sorry at all. Mira approached the damaged machine, scanning it with a handheld device. "The stress tolerance capacitor has completely failed. This has never happened before." Commander Kradal's posture had changed, his previous condescension replaced with something approaching caution. "How is this possible? Their planet's gravity is only marginally higher than standard." "I was a competitive weightlifter before becoming an engineer," Yuri explained with a shrug. "I trained for years. Not every human is this strong, but we're generally tougher than we look." The commander turned to Mira. "Run a full physiological scan. I want to know everything about their muscle fiber density, skeletal reinforcement, and neural response patterns." He glanced back at Yuri with new interest. "Perhaps there is more to learn from these Earth specimens than we anticipated." 2 days later, Yuri found himself in considerably improved circumstances. After the strength assessment incident, he'd been moved from a holding cell to private quarters, still confined, but comfortable. The Gelvans had subjected him to numerous non-invasive scans and tests, seemingly fascinated by human physiology. As he finished the alien meal they'd provided, surprisingly palatable despite its unusual colors, the door slid open. Commander Kradal entered, accompanied by Mira and another Gelvan Yuri hadn't seen before. "Earth Specimen 7, Kradal began, then paused. "Yuri Ivanov. Our diplomatic team has made contact with your government. Negotiations are underway for formal relations between our civilizations." "That's good news," Yuri said cautiously. "When can I go home?" "Soon," the commander replied. "But first, High Commander Drezian wishes to speak with you." He gestured to the third Gelvan, who stepped forward. High Commander Drezian was taller than the others, with elaborate cranial ridges and ceremonial markings on his silver-gray skin. When he spoke, his voice carried an unexpected warmth. "Yuri Ivanov of Earth, I must extend our formal apologies for your capture and treatment. It was a regrettable necessity born of caution, but we recognize it violated your autonomy." Yuri crossed his arms. "Apology noted, but I'd appreciate some answers about why you're really here." Drezian nodded. "Direct. Good. The Gelvan Empire spans 17 star systems. We explore, we trade, we occasionally conquer, though less often now than in our past. Your solar system lies at a strategic junction between our territory and that of the Krovian Hegemony. And the Krovians aren't friends of yours, I take it. They are aggressive expansionists with biological enhancements that make them formidable warriors. For generations, we have maintained an uneasy peace through deterrence. Our technology surpasses theirs, but their natural strength and martial prowess makes open conflict undesirable." Mira stepped forward, activating a holographic display. "This is why your performance during the strength assessment was so significant. Your physical capabilities approach Krovian levels, despite having no genetic engineering or biological augmentation." Yuri frowned. "So I broke your machine, and now you're interested in humans as potential soldiers." "Not exactly," Drezian replied. "We're interested in an alliance. Your species has impressed us in unexpected ways. The strength you demonstrated isn't your only asset. Your adaptability, pain tolerance, and problem-solving abilities are remarkably developed." "We've had to adapt to survive," Yuri said. "Earth isn't always a friendly place." Commander Kradal made a gesture that might have been respect. "The strength assessment incident has been shared with our high command. They were skeptical until we provided the data." Drezian's expression grew serious. "Yuri Ivanov, I am authorized to offer you a position as liaison between our civilizations. You would help us understand your species and, in turn, learn about ours. This knowledge would be shared with your government as part of our diplomatic exchange." Yuri considered the offer. "And if I decline?" "Then you will be returned to Earth with our apologies and compensation for your inconvenience." "This is a request, not a demand." Before Yuri could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Commander Kradal's communicator activated, projecting a small hologram of a Gelvan officer. "Commander, Krovian warships have entered the system. They're demanding to know why we've claimed territory in this sector without notification." Drezian's posture stiffened. "They're testing us. Mobilize the defense grid but maintain communication channels." The officer nodded and the hologram vanished. Drezian turned back to Yuri. "It seems events are accelerating. The Krovians have spies everywhere. They must have learned of our interest in your world." Yuri stood up. "Let me help. If they're as strong as you say, maybe having a human perspective could be useful." Drezian studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Commander, bring him to the command center. Let us see if the Krovians are as impressed by humans as we have become." The command center of the Gelvan ship was a marvel of alien technology. Holographic displays showed the positions of both Gelvan and Krovian vessels in Earth orbit, while communication officers worked frantically at their stations. "High Commander," one officer called out. "The Krovian ambassador is demanding to speak with you directly." Drezian nodded. "Open the channel." A large hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing a massive, red-skinned alien with prominent bone ridges and muscles that seemed to ripple beneath his armor. 4 yellow eyes narrowed as he spotted Drezian. "High Commander," the Krovian growled. "Your presence in this system violates Protocol 72 of the Armistice. Explain yourself before we consider this an act of aggression." "Ambassador Gruck," Dresian replied calmly, "we are conducting peaceful first contact with an emerging spacefaring species. No violation has occurred." Gruck's eyes moved past Dresian, settling on Yuri. "Is that one of the natives? Bring it closer." Dresian glanced at Yuri, who stepped forward without waiting for instruction. "I'm Yuri Ivanov, human, from planet Earth." The Krovian ambassador studied him with obvious disdain. "Such a frail-looking species. If the Gelvans are courting you as allies, you should know their technology comes with many strings attached. They will use you as buffer states against us." "That's not," Dresian began, but Yuri interrupted. "Ambassador Gruck, I understand your concern. But humans make our own decisions. We're not easily manipulated or intimidated." Gruck let out a bark of laughter. "Bold words from a species that hasn't left its own solar system. Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate what makes your kind worthy of attention in galactic politics." Commander Krathal stepped forward. "Ambassador, the human has already demonstrated remarkable physical capabilities. He exceeded our strength assessment parameters." "Did he?" Gruck's tone was mocking. "Your Gelvan machines are calibrated for your weak physiology." "A true test would be against Krovian standards." Dresian's posture tensed. "What are you suggesting, Ambassador?" "A simple demonstration." Gruck's wide mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. "I will send my adjutant to your ship with our strength quantifier. If the human can impress us, perhaps we'll consider your presence here legitimate after all." After the communication ended, Dresian turned to Yuri. "You don't have to do this. Krovian strength standards are extremely demanding, even for their own kind." Yuri crossed his arms. "What happens if I refuse?" "They will likely increase diplomatic pressure, possibly escalate to military threats against both our peoples. Then I don't see that I have much choice." Yuri rolled his shoulders, working out the tension. "Besides, I'm curious to see how I stack up." Within an hour, a Krovian shuttle had docked with the Gelvan ship. Ambassador Gruck's adjutant, a slightly smaller but no less intimidating Krovian named Vorgash, brought with him a device that looked like a hybrid between a vice grip and a hydraulic press. "This is a standard Krovian strength quantifier," Vorgash explained, setting up the device in the same assessment chamber where Yuri had broken the Gelvan machine. "It measures pure grip and crushing force, the most relevant strength metric in real combat." Mira scanned the device with her instruments. "The resistance mechanisms are purely mechanical, not electronic, quite primitive compared to our technology." Vorgash snorted. "Your electronic sensors failed to accurately measure the human strength." "Our method is foolproof. Either he can compress the handles to the designated markers, or he cannot." The gathered aliens, both Gelvan and Krovian, watched as Yuri approached the device. It consisted of two thick metal handles connected to a series of increasingly resistant spring mechanisms and pressure gauges. Each marker represents the minimum qualification for different ranks in Krovian society, Vorgash explained, pointing to colored lines on the gauge. "Green is civilian standard, blue is military minimum, red is elite warrior class. The black line," he chuckled, "well, no non-Krovian has ever reached it." Yuri examined the device. "Seems straightforward enough. What's the protocol? You grip the handles and squeeze with maximum force. The gauge will register your result." Vorgash demonstrated, his powerful hands easily compressing the handles to the blue line before he released them. Yuri positioned himself and took the handles. They were uncomfortably large for human hands, but he managed to get a solid grip. With a deep breath, he began to squeeze. The resistance was immediate and intense. The handles barely moved at first, and Yuri had to adjust his stance to gain better leverage. Slowly, the gauge needle began to rise, passing the green marker as he gritted his teeth and increased his effort. Civilian standard achieved, Vorgash noted with mild surprise. Interesting. Yuri didn't respond, focusing entirely on the task. His face reddened with effort as he poured more strength into his grip. The veins in his forearm stood out prominently as the needle edged toward the blue line. Approaching military minimum, Mira observed, her voice betraying excitement. With a grunt of pain, Yuri pushed harder. The needle touched the blue line, then crept past it. Sweat poured down his face as his muscles trembled with the strain. Vorgash's 4 eyes widened slightly. Unexpected. But the elite standard remains well beyond your reach, human. Those words triggered something in Yuri. The memory of years of training, of pushing beyond perceived limits, flooded back to him. With a roar that startled the aliens, he summoned reserves of strength he hadn't tapped since his last competition. The needle moved steadily toward the red line. "Impossible," whispered Vorgash. Yuri's vision began to blur at the edges, but he refused to relent. Every muscle in his body seemed to be contributing to the effort as he squeezed with everything he had. The needle touched the red line. A murmur went through the Gelvan observers. Even Commander Kratall looked shocked. Vorgash's expression had transformed from disdain to disbelief. But Yuri wasn't finished. Something about the Krovians' earlier mockery, combined with the days of being treated as a specimen rather than a person, fueled a final surge of defiance. With a last desperate effort that sent pain shooting through his arms, he forced the handles closer together. The needle edged past the red line, moving steadily toward the previously unattainable black marker. "Stop," Vorgash suddenly shouted. "You'll damage the..." A loud crack interrupted him as something inside the device gave way. The handles slammed together with unexpected speed, and the gauge needle spun wildly before stopping at the maximum reading well past the black line. Yuri released the handles and staggered backward, his arms feeling like rubber. Commander Kratall caught him before he could fall. "Are you injured?" The commander asked. "Just exhausted," Yuri gasped, flexing his fingers painfully. Vorgash approached the broken device, examining it with a mixture of disbelief and growing respect. "The primary resistance coil has sheared completely." He looked up at Yuri. "No non-Krovian has ever broken this testing equipment before. Our warriors trained for decades to reach such levels." High Commander Drezian stepped forward. "I believe this demonstration answers your earlier question. Ambassador," he said, addressing the holographic image of Gruk that had been observing the entire event. "The humans are indeed worthy of attention in galactic politics." Gruk's expression was unreadable for a moment, then he inclined his massive head slightly. "It seems we have underestimated this species. A single demonstration is not conclusive, but interesting nonetheless." His yellow eyes fixed on Yuri. "Human, your performance honors your species. We will be watching your civilization's development with great interest." The hologram disappeared. Vorgash gathered the broken testing device, giving Yuri a final appraising look before departing to his shuttle. Once the Krovians had left, Mira approached Yuri with a medical scanner. "Your muscle fibers show micro-tears consistent with extreme exertion. You require rest and protein supplementation to recover properly." "I'll be fine," Yuri assured her, though his arms still trembled slightly. "I've pushed harder in competition." Drezian gestured for Yuri to join him away from the others. "You've done a remarkable thing today, Yuri Ivanov. The Krovians rarely show respect to any species they consider physically inferior. Your demonstration may have averted a diplomatic crisis." "Happy to help," Yuri said, flexing his sore hands. But I meant what I said earlier: humans make our own decisions. If your empire wants an alliance, it needs to be as equals, not as pawns in your conflict with the Krovians. Understood, Dresian nodded solemnly. And after witnessing your capabilities firsthand, I believe our High Command will be quite receptive to equal partnership terms. Over the next week, Yuri's status aboard the Gelvan ship transformed from prisoner to honored guest. He served as an unofficial advisor during the preliminary diplomatic discussions with Earth governments, helping to translate human concerns and priorities into terms the Gelvans could understand. The Krovians maintained a presence in the system, but kept their distance, observing the developing situation with evident interest. Occasionally, Yuri would catch glimpses of Ambassador Gruk during interspecies communications, the massive alien studying him with what seemed like grudging respect. On the 8th day after breaking the Krovian strength quantifier, Yuri was invited to a formal meeting in the Gelvan ship's diplomatic chamber. When he arrived, he found not only High Commander Dresian and his staff, but also a holographic delegation from Earth, including representatives from major world powers. "Ah, Engineer Ivanov," said the UN Secretary-General as Yuri entered. "Your unexpected role as humanity's first diplomatic representative has been most remarkable. We owe you a debt of gratitude." Yuri nodded respectfully. "I was just trying to survive and get home, sir. And in doing so, you've helped secure humanity a more advantageous position than we might otherwise have had," added the Russian delegate, clearly proud of her countryman's performance. Dresian gestured for Yuri to take a seat at the large circular table. "We have reached a preliminary agreement for technological exchange and mutual defense. Before we formalize these terms, we wanted to ensure Engineer Ivanov's input was included." The American representative leaned forward. "The Gelvans have been quite insistent that you play a continuing role in our developing relationship, Ivanov. They seem to have developed a high regard for your capabilities." "I just broke a couple of their machines," Yuri said with a slight smile, "but I'm happy to help however I can." The diplomatic discussions continued for hours, with Yuri providing context and clarification when cultural misunderstandings arose. By the end, a framework had been established. Earth would receive limited technological assistance to accelerate its development, while the Gelvans would gain access to certain raw materials and a strategic buffer zone against Krovian expansion. As the meeting concluded, the holographic Earth delegation signed off, promising continued negotiations through proper diplomatic channels. When only the Gelvans remained, Dresian approached Yuri with a small device in his hand. "This is for you," the High Commander said, offering the sleek metallic object. "A translation and communication module coded specifically to your neural patterns. It will allow you to understand and speak any language in our database." Yuri accepted the gift cautiously. "Thank you." "Does this mean I'm going home soon?" "Yes, tomorrow, in fact." Dresian's expression turned serious. "But I must also extend an invitation. The Gelvan Science Academy would welcome you as our first human exchange scholar. You would have full access to our knowledge bases and could return to Earth whenever you wished." "I'm just an engineer, not a scientist," Yuri pointed out. Commander Kratall, who had been listening nearby, stepped forward. "You are more than that now, Yuri Ivanov. You are the human who broke the machines, both ours and the Krovians. That makes you uniquely qualified to help us understand your species' potential." Yuri considered the offer. "I'd need time to think about it and to recover from this whole experience." "Of course," Dresian agreed. "The invitation remains open. For now, prepare for your return to Earth." Your government has arranged quite the reception. The next morning, as Yuri prepared to board the shuttle that would take him back to Earth, he was surprised to find Mira waiting for him in the transport bay. "Chief Scientist," he greeted her. "Come to make sure I don't break anything else before I leave." A flicker of what might have been amusement crossed her alien features. "I came to provide you with this." She handed him a data crystal. "It contains all our findings regarding human physiology, based on our examinations of you and the other specimens. Your medical scientists will find it illuminating." "The other specimens, you mean the other humans you captured? Are they all being released too?" "Yes. Most have already been returned." She hesitated, then added, "I also wanted to thank you personally. Your performance during the strength assessments has opened new research avenues for my team. We had not considered that untrained, non-engineered species could achieve such results through merely environmental adaptation and discipline." Yuri smiled. "There's an old saying on Earth, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." Mira's head tilted in confusion. "I do not understand this reference to canines. It means determination and heart matter more than raw physical advantages," Yuri explained, shouldering his small bag of belongings. "Something to keep in mind as our species get to know each other better." As he boarded the shuttle, Commander Krathal appeared, offering a formal Gelvan salute. "Safe journey, Yuri Ivanov. Your name is now recorded in the Gelvan historical archives, the first human to earn the respect of both our empire and the Krovian hegemony." "Hopefully not the last," Yuri replied, returning the salute as best he could. The shuttle journey to Earth was brief, but gave Yuri time to reflect on everything that had happened. What had begun as a terrifying abduction had transformed into a pivotal moment for human history. Earth was no longer alone in the universe, and thanks partly to his demonstrated strength, humanity was entering the galactic community from a position of respect rather than subjugation. As the shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere, Yuri gazed out at the blue planet below. The future would bring challenges as humans navigated relationships with the Gelvans, Krovians, and whatever other alien civilizations waited among the stars. But for the first time since his capture, he felt genuine optimism. The shuttle touched down at a military base outside Moscow, where a delegation of officials waited on the tarmac. As the door opened, and Yuri stepped out into the familiar gravity and air of his home world, he took a deep breath and smiled. A military officer approached and saluted. "Engineer Ivanov, on behalf of the United Nations and the Russian Federation, welcome home. Your service to humanity has been extraordinary." "Thank you, Colonel," Yuri replied, "but I'm afraid I've developed a habit of breaking expensive equipment. I hope that won't be a problem." The officer laughed. "Under the circumstances, I think we can make an exception." As they walked toward the waiting vehicles, the officer lowered his voice. "The Gelvan High Command transmitted records of your strength demonstrations. Our scientists can hardly believe what they saw." Yuri shrugged. "I was just being human." "That's precisely what has everyone so excited," the officer replied. "If one human engineer could make such an impression on two advanced civilizations, imagine what humanity as a whole might accomplish." 3 months later, Yuri stood in a newly constructed facility outside Geneva, the Interspecies Cooperation Center. As Earth's first official liaison to the Gelvan Empire, he had been tasked with helping establish protocols for the exchange of knowledge and technology. The center hummed with activity as scientists and diplomats from around the world worked alongside a small contingent of Gelvan advisors. In one section, engineers studied Gelvan propulsion technology. In another, Alien linguists analyzed Earth languages with fascination. Yuri was reviewing schematics for a joint human-Gelvan research vessel when his communication module chimed. The holographic form of Commander Krathal appeared before him. Yuri Ivanov, greetings from the flagship. I trust your new position is satisfactory. It's keeping me busy, Yuri replied with a smile. How are the diplomatic talks progressing? Well enough. Your world leaders are remarkably protective of their individual territories, but we're making progress. Krathal's expression grew more serious. However, I contact you with news from the border regions. The Krovians have requested a formal meeting with human representatives. Yuri raised an eyebrow. That's unexpected. What do they want? Officially, to establish their own diplomatic channel with Earth. Unofficially. Krathal paused. Ambassador Gruk specifically requested your presence. It seems your demonstration left quite an impression. The Krovians respect strength above all else. I'm not a diplomat, Yuri pointed out. No, but you are the human who broke their unbreakable machine. In their culture, that grants you a status few non-Krovians have ever achieved. Krathal's hologram shifted slightly. High Commander Drezian believes your participation could help ensure balanced relations between all three of our civilizations. Yuri considered this for a moment. When and where? Their delegation arrives in 2 weeks. The meeting will take place on your International Space Station neutral territory, so to speak. After the communication ended, Yuri walked to the large observation window overlooking Lake Geneva. In the distance, he could see the Gelvan shuttle that had brought their advisors to Earth, its sleek design unlike anything humans had created. A voice spoke behind him. Penny for your thoughts, Engineer Ivanov. Yuri turned to find Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the center's scientific director. Just thinking about how much has changed, he replied. 3 months ago, I was doing routine maintenance on the ISS. Now I'm preparing to meet with representatives of 2 alien civilizations. Dr. Chen nodded. All because you broke their machines. Sometimes strength isn't just about how much you can lift, Yuri said thoughtfully. It's about standing your ground when everything around you changes. Philosophical as well as strong, she noted with a smile. No wonder the aliens are impressed. 2 weeks later, Yuri floated in the observation module of the International Space Station, watching as the Krovian diplomatic vessel maneuvered into docking position. The massive ship dwarfed even the Gelvan cruiser that had arrived earlier. Commander Krathal floated beside him, the Gelvan's slender body adapting surprisingly well to zero gravity. Remember, the Krovians respond to confidence and direct speech. Do not show hesitation or they will interpret it as weakness. Got it, Yuri replied, straightening his formal uniform. Direct and confident. When the airlock finally opened, Ambassador Gruk had to duck his massive frame to enter the station. Behind him came 2 other Krovians, including Vorgash, who carried a familiar-looking device, another strength quantifier. Yuri Ivanov, Gruk rumbled, his deep voice filling the module. The human who broke the machine. We meet face to face at last. Ambassador Gruk, Yuri replied with a formal nod. Welcome to humanity's first space station. The Krovian glanced around the module with 4 yellow eyes. Primitive but functional, much like your species itself. His gaze returned to Yuri. Before we begin formal discussions, there is a matter of honor to address. Vorgash stepped forward, presenting the strength quantifier. This is calibrated to the highest Krovian standards. We wish to verify your previous performance under controlled conditions. Commander Krathal moved slightly forward. We agreed this would be a diplomatic meeting, not another test of the human's physical abilities. Gruk's massive shoulders rose in what might have been a shrug. In Krovian culture, diplomatic standing is linked to demonstrated strength. If Yuri Ivanov wishes to represent humanity in discussions with our hegemony, he must prove his earlier performance was not anomalous. Yuri looked at the device, then back at the ambassador. And if I refuse, then we will conduct our diplomatic business with your political leaders only, and you will have no voice in the proceedings. Gruck's tone made it clear this would be a less favorable outcome for Earth. With a sigh, Yuri nodded. Very well. One demonstration, then we move to the actual negotiations. He took the device from Vorgash, noting that it appeared identical to the one he'd broken months ago. Setting his feet against a handhold to stabilize himself in the zero-gravity environment, he gripped the handles and began to squeeze. The resistance felt even greater than before, but Yuri was prepared this time. Months of specific training since his return to Earth anticipating just such a rematch had strengthened his grip beyond what it had been during the first test. The needle moved steadily past the green marker, then the blue, approaching the red line that indicated elite Krovian warrior status. Gruck watched intently, his alien features impossible to raid. With a controlled exhale, Yuri pushed harder, driving the needle past the red line. His muscles burned with the effort, but he maintained his composure, focusing on smooth, steady pressure rather than a desperate surge. As the needle approached the black line, the previously unattainable Mark Vorgash leaned forward, his four eyes wide with anticipation. With one final effort, Yuri forced the handles closer together. The needle touched the black line, then edged slightly beyond it. Unlike the previous device, this one held firm, recording his maximum output without breaking. Gruck's wide mouth stretched into what might have been a smile as Yuri released the handles and flexed his fingers. Satisfactory, the ambassador declared. The human strength is confirmed. We may proceed with negotiations as equals. As the diplomatic meetings began in earnest, Yuri found himself in the unexpected role of mediator between two advanced alien civilizations and his own species. The Krovians, impressed by his demonstrated strength, treated his input with a respect they rarely showed to non-warriors. The Gelvans, who had first discovered his unusual capabilities, valued his insights into human psychology and priorities. By the end of the week-long negotiations, a framework for peaceful cooperation had been established. Earth would maintain independent relations with both the Gelvan Empire and the Krovian Hegemony, serving as a neutral zone between the two rival powers. In exchange, humanity would receive limited access to advanced technologies from both civilizations, accelerating Earth's development while preserving its cultural autonomy. As the alien delegations prepared to depart, Ambassador Gruck approached Yuri one final time. "Yuri Ivanov," the massive Krovian said, extending a four-fingered hand in the human gesture he had learned during the negotiations. "Your species has earned the respect of the hegemony, a rare achievement." Yuri accepted the handshake, feeling the controlled power in the ambassador's grip. "We're just getting started, Ambassador. Humans have a lot more to offer than physical strength." "Perhaps," Gruck rumbled, "but never underestimate the value of breaking machines when others said it couldn't be done. Sometimes that is how new possibilities are discovered." As the alien ships departed and Earth continued its transformation into a member of the galactic community, Yuri often reflected on those words. In the end, it wasn't just his strength that had made a difference, it was humanity's ability to exceed expectations, to break through barriers others thought impenetrable. The machines he had broken were just the beginning. The real test would be how humanity navigated its new place among the stars, balancing between powerful civilizations while forging its own path forward. But for the first time in history, Earth faced that challenge not from a position of weakness, but from one of hard-earned respect. And it had all started with a single, impossible lift.